So please welcome one of our favorite gurus, Chris Drake.
Hey Jace, I don't suppose you have your DVI converter. Okay. Don't hit this guy.
See if this one will work for you.
Well, you could. No, I need a tiny one. Mine's at home plugged into my monitor. You say you do have one?
No, mine's the same as ours.
Oh. Somebody. Let's see. Or just another laptop I can put my slides on. All of them. All right.
Team effort.
So once again.
Okay. This happened. I did this presentation at OSCON, whenever OSCON was. It's all a blur now. And I couldn't use my laptop for that either. I couldn't get the stupid projector to work. So, I'm like, somebody in the audience want to let me use their laptop? Done. Okay. So, maybe I'm cursed. Maybe it's my presentation is cursed. Maybe it just wouldn't be open source if stuff didn't break all the time, right? That's why we like it, because we get to fix it. So, I'm going to talk about enterprise-related things with Ubuntu.
Can you turn the lights down?
Somebody could turn the lights down.
Keep your hand up. I think there's a dimmer switch right there.
I don't know where the switches are.
Try the front set off.
There you go.
I don't know if that'll work with video, but we can try it.
Evidently not. We don't have lights.
Too much, or you okay there?
Depends on what's more important.
Wow, that dims a whole.
It's not really much of a dimmer, is it?
Well, then let's.
More like a switch.
Where's our home automation?
Does
I guess it works.
that work for you? I don't need to see myself on video. I don't care. I mean, I don't know what you guys think.
Well, that's good, right? Oh, that was good.
Jeez.
There's no
You're doing it wrong.
Invisible switch.
The light switch is also open source.
Okay. So, all right. A little bit about myself for those that don't know who I am. I know a lot of you guys already. My name is Chris Edwards, of course. On IRC I go by Zealot. This nickname came around because when I really started getting into this stuff, if it wasn't Ubuntu, it was crap, and I was really just a total zealot about everything. So I thought, hey, why not, you know? So that was the nickname that people gave me. I also kind of was one of the pioneers for local community stuff within the Ubuntu world. Ubuntu has a project called Loco, which, yeah, we are crazy, but it's short for local community. This is what we do that for. But we just kind of establish local community groups around the country. So I started the one here. We've been going on this one for a couple years now. We have lots of fun. Everybody, you know, meets good friends and learns stuff every month at our meetings. I then also, with some of the other guys, trained the other states in the U.S. on how to do the same thing. So we've got local community teams in just about every state of the U.S. So if you have to move, or if you finish school and you go back to wherever it is that you come from, you can most likely find a Loco team there. And I'm a Linux instructor with Guru Labs, so this is what we do. We teach Linux stuff. Also, I write the ubuntututorials.com site. A lot of you might have found it, or I found it by accident on Google. How do I do this? Or this is broken, or whatever. My site comes up for just about everything. But if you have any ideas of stuff I can write up, let me know. I'm in a little bit of a drought the last few weeks. Stuff's just working now. I don't really have to tell people how to do it anymore. Maybe I should have one about projectors. Maybe. All right, so the objectives here of my presentation is, because this is a how-to, the whole topic of this conference is how to do stuff. I wanted to teach you how to do stuff in the enterprise level on Ubuntu. So the slides actually have the commands and everything that you would run. So if you wanted to deploy something like this later on, you could just grab the slides later and just type the commands in and okay, I've just set it up. So what I've tried to do with my tutorials and with my teaching is pretty much not make any assumptions or assume you don't know anything. So give you every command and just every last thing you need to do to set something up. So you can just copy, paste, done, done, done. Oh, cool. Now I have this set up. So we're going to go over these major topics. Support, since we are talking about the enterprise, you know, at the end of the day it comes down to who's going to support this. So what does Ubuntu have in regards to support? Some prerequisite considerations, some things you'd want to set up internally to get some of these kind of enterprising benefits. Network install options, network services, networked and local security, and also automated installations. Did you know that Ubuntu supports Kickstart and stuff like that? So if you come from the Red Hat and you use Kickstart and all of its glory, you can use the same thing in Ubuntu. We'll mention that. So this is kind of targeted towards this audience. Linux or Unix admins, people who are interested in using Ubuntu in an enterprise, or if you have larger deployments or something like that. What are some tips about how I could make my life easier using Ubuntu? So in regards to support, it does come down to, again, you know, who's going to support this. And in the Ubuntu world, we don't really like the enterprise term. That's too businessy or whatever, you know, it's like a bad word for most of the Ubuntu guys. So we call it LTS instead. It's the same thing. So long-term support, or LTS, this is kind of the release schedule for the Ubuntu, the kind of the plan of what's going to happen with Ubuntu. We're at 804.1 right now, and that'll be supported, as you see, for a long time, into 2011 for the desktop, 2013 for the server. So you can set up an Ubuntu server and it's supported for, it'll get security updates and all that kind of stuff for quite a while. Then we'll have incremental updates every 6 months, of course, just like Fedora does and SUSE does, and then another LTS. So an LTS every 2 years, and you can upgrade directly from this to this, and it works really, really easily. I actually did it on my production web server. I went from 606 to 804, and the whole upgrade took 9 minutes, and the only downtime I had was the reboot at the end. So 30 seconds of reboot time. It's actually really, really slick. 8.10 will come out in October. One thing you might not have noticed, the names is year.month, if you didn't know that. So 8.10 means in October of 2008 we'll get the new version, and then 9.10 and so on and so on. 9.04, 9.10. Also, the parent company of Ubuntu, which is Canonical, has something called Landscape, which is kind of their offering, or their equivalent kind of the RHN. So if you used the Red Hat network before for your system administration, you can use Landscape. So you can find out more about Landscape if you go there. I don't know if they're still offering it, but they had a free trial for a little while. You could just get a trial account, put your machines on there, and kind of see how you like it, see how it works, give them some feedback. I set it up for my machines, and it's kind of nice. You know, I can just see all of them, see which ones need updates. I can click Apply Updates, and they just go. I don't have to go around to each machine, update, update. You guys know how that is. So having a centralized place for management and monitoring and support is really nice. When I teach system administration for Guru Labs, rule number 1 of my class is a good admin is a lazy admin. This is something that can make you a little more lazy. Make the computer do the work instead of you doing all the work. So again, you can check out Landscape there. All right, so let's say we're going to set up some enterprise stuff in our office. Some of the internal prerequisites that we might want. We'd likely want a repository mirror. and I'll show you a couple ways that you can set up a repository mirror. You can use the aptmirror tool or exported CD or DVD content. So you could, if you already have the ISOs downloaded or the DVD downloaded, you can use that. And I'll show you that over the next couple of slides. Also a web server to make that stuff available. So you can use Apache or Lite or Nginx if you like. Those are all available in the repository. And I'll show you how you could do those. So we've got actually 3 different levels of repository setups you could do. aptmirror is the full, I want to mirror every application that is available to Ubuntu users. So you could run this command, apt-get install aptmirror. Then you've got a file etc aptmirrorlist. And here's a link of an example mirror list that I've updated and put on the web, so you can look at, okay, what should this mirror list file look like if I wanted to set up my mirror. Basically you tell it, okay, you know, where do I want to store it and what do I want to store. So do I want to download and mirror all the programs just for 804, or maybe a couple of previous versions, or you know, do I want 32-bit, 64-bit, all that kind of stuff. And again, there's some examples in here if you want to look at that. And then you can also turn on a cron job so it automatically updates it for you. Again, if you're a lazy admin, cron should be your best friend. Make cron do all the work. Just say do this at 2 o'clock, do this at 4:30, do this and that and this other thing. Here's an example of the aptmirror cron job you could also look at for turning it on to automatically update your system. And then periodically you just run aptmirror. Done. So I have a mirror, for example. I have a little hard drive, it's 80 gig, and I have a mirror on it. I have the 32-bit and 64-bit for 804.1, and it takes up 34 gig, I think. So it doesn't take up a ton of space, but again, you've got every application available to Ubuntu users, and you could have that internally. So instead of clogging the tubes all the time when you've got 100 machines and say get updates, just get them locally and use the LAN and use your nice fast gigabit network instead of going out over the internet machine and getting them like that.
That's for both, or just for 64-bit and 32-bit? Is that each 34 gig? Or?
Oh, combined. 32-bit and 64-bit for 804 combined is 34, 35 gig, I think it is. So again, I've tried to make this such that you can just use these commands. If you wanted to try to set this up later, you could refer to the slides. You can refer to these links and say, okay, what should this conf file look like? And you could set that up yourself. Now, if you don't have 35 gig because you're still stuck in the 90s or something and you don't have big drives, I saw a terabyte drive for 150 bucks last week, so drive space is cheap. But if you want to do the poor man's mirror, only mirror the stuff that you want or that you've used, you could use the tool called aptcache. This is a caching system for the apt repositories. So you can set up aptcache like this. Then there's a config file and you just need to turn it on. So you switch the 0 to a 1. And then on all your client machines, let's say I set up this machine as an aptcacher. So this is my central caching repository tool. And then when any of you want to use that cache, you can update your clients to your sources list. Instead of going directly to the repository, you'd point them to whatever my internal IP is. And so when you get an update, or when you say apt-get install whatever, it'll go to me first and say, hey, do you already have that? Oh yeah, I do. Here you go. Boom, done. It's way faster that way. Now if I don't have it, I'll go get it for you and then keep it in my cache for anybody who wants it later. So this is kind of a nice way to do it. But again, this doesn't require that you're storing 30 plus gigs of stuff. It just caches what you've already got. And whenever anybody needs something new, it caches that. So if you've got 50 machines and you tell one of them, go get updates, it'll get the updates and boom, they're done, they're here. Now you tell the rest of them to go get updates. They grab them over the LAN, done, done, done. So it's way faster. So again, this is kind of the poor man's aptmirror. Also, if you have a CD or a DVD already downloaded, you could just make that available. So you can loop mount it. The nice thing is you can download the ISO image, and without having to actually burn it off to a disk, you could run this command and basically lie to your machine and say, oh yeah, that's in the drive, sure. So it thinks it's mounted. You mount it somewhere, you copy your contents over, and now each of the CDs or the DVDs that you download actually has a small repository on it. So if you download one of these and then you make it available over your web folder, people could pull packages from you, basically from the CD. So if aptcache is kind of the poor man's aptmirror, this is kind of the poor man's aptcacher, I suppose. Also, if you want to do pixie-based stuff, if you want to let your machine boot off of the network and then be able to build an Ubuntu machine, there are custom kernels for pixie, and those are available on the CDs. Anytime you download a CD, it'll have the pixie-specific kernels. So you can go to this path and look for the Linux and the initRD file and set it up for pixie.
You don't have to have access to the CD in any way. Obviously, you can boot it off the network. But can I use a public mirror?
Yeah, these could use a public mirror or our apt cacher that we set up, or the app, you know.
Download the CD to find the netboot images, or can you get those individually somewhere else?
These are also available online. So if you went to the repository and browsed through a little bit manually, you could find these images. It's in this same directory structure. Just go to like usarchives.ubuntu.com and into main and then Ubuntu installer, I think it is. So you can just download them directly if you don't already have them. So also lastly, if we're going to set up these mirrors or something, we need some way to make it available to the rest of the world, and we can do that with a web server. So you can install Apache, or you can install Lite. Lite HTTP is just another variant web server that just tries to be more lightweight and tiny and have much, you know, of a smaller footprint, memory footprint, stuff like that. If you've used Nginx, you could use that as well, and it doesn't really matter which one. But then all I do is I've downloaded and I've set up my mirror. So I go into my web server and I make a symbolic link using this command. So I'd go to var www.html, make a link to wherever my mirror is, and then people could come to my web server, so whatever my address is or my IP is, /Ubuntu, and there's all the packages they could ever want. So this is something that we would set up, and this is useful for like network installations or just having a localized repository available. So next I wanted to mention that Ubuntu does have a network installer. I think a lot of people didn't know about this. One of the things that people like about Red Hat and Fedora and the Anaconda installer is that it supports network-based installations. And Ubuntu does as well. It's just not marketed very much. When you go to download Ubuntu, it says, well, do you want this image or this image? It doesn't really mention the network installer. But these are the links to the 386 and the 64-bit network installer ISOs if you'd like to get those. They're really tiny. They're like 10 megs or something. So you can just burn them to a disk, or there's an image for that you can just burn onto a USB drive and just do a network installation. So some of the nice things about this is it supports HTTP and FTP. So if we've set up our mirror like we did in those last few slides, and we set up Apache, okay, it's available over the web. Now I can install from what I just set up. So I don't have to download or burn CDs for all my machines. I say install over the network. It's over there. All the packages you need are over there. A lot of times this is way faster than doing it from a CD or a DVD. I've done installations. I did like Ubuntu Desktop, for example, over the network, and the whole install was done in 9 minutes. I've done server installs, including the LAMP stack, so Apache, MySQL, PHP, in 5.5 minutes. So if you've got a healthy network, you know, a 10100 or a gigabit network, it's going to go a lot faster than trying to read it from a disk. It's also a lot more flexible as far as the boot options. You can boot it from a CD or a USB or pixie or something like that. So we're not stuck to, it's not the 80s anymore. We're not just stuck to using CDs or floppies or something like that. Also, there's more flexible install time options. So if you've installed Ubuntu before, you probably realize that you go through the installer, you click install basically, and it just puts it on your machine. It doesn't really ask you what do you want. The network installer will say, what do you want? And it'll have this whole group of things. Do you want a DNS server? Do you want a mail server? Do you want a web server? Do you want SSH? Do you want all kinds of stuff? And I'll show you a couple of screenshots of all the different options that it has that you can set up. Also, the nice thing that I really like about it is that security patches are applied as soon as you're done. Since you're pulling it from an updated repository, it's installing the latest, greatest versions, all the newest packages and everything. So as soon as your machine's installed, it's updated. It's finished. You don't have to install it and then say update, and it says, I've got 200 packages for you. You know, then you use all of your bandwidth again to download all the new stuff. It's already done. So again, these tiny URL links, you can download the 64-bit or the 32-bit ISOs for the network installer. You'll want to find the mini.iso, that's the CD-based. You could burn it to a CD. Again, it's like 10 meg or something like that. The boot image is a USB-based, and Linux and initRD, again, are the pixie-based, if you want to do a pixie setup. So here's some of the install options. I don't know how well you can see some of these, but it's got DNS server, Edge Ubuntu. Have we seen any Edge Ubuntu presentations this week so far? No. Not yet. We've got some, okay. So Edge Ubuntu, LAMP, Mail, OpenSSH, Postgres, Print, Samba, 2D and 3D creation and editing suites, audio editing, Kubuntu desktop. We've got Edge Ubuntu, Gobuntu, Kubuntu, Mythbuntu, Ubuntu, Xubuntu. Yeah, there's lots of Ubuntus. Okay? And when you install, you can just pick the one you want. I want to try out Xubuntu. What is that all about? I check the box. You see my cursor's in here. I just hit the space bar. It'll install Xubuntu for me. So you don't have to download ISOs for Kubuntu and Xubuntu and Edge Ubuntu and all the Ubuntus. Okay? I've already got the repository. They all share the same repository. Kubuntu and Edge, they all come from the same place. So I just tell it which packages I want. So this makes it a lot more flexible as about what am I going to install. I want to try out Mythbuntu. I want to set up my own DVR. Done. Click. Okay. Wow. That's my slide. Yeah. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention is one thing that I find all the time is that you go to a company or you go work someplace and you know, they use IM all the time for internal communications, but this internal communication is using MSN or Yahoo or something like that, right? It's going off-site to the MSN server, and then it's coming back to you, and who knows if Big Brother is watching, and nobody's wearing their tinfoil hats, but who has one? You know, everybody's got a tinfoil hat somewhere, right? So set up an internal secure Jabber server. So when you guys use IM, it just goes from my desk to yours. It doesn't go out to Yahoo or it doesn't go out to wherever. So you can control your communications. You can keep it in-house. The one that I like to use for this is called OpenFire. Do you have a question? Or are you stretching or something? Okay. It's called OpenFire. OpenFire is really, really, really simple to set up. It supports local users, LDAP users, or Active Directory. So if you guys have ADS set up at your office, you can say, hey, OpenFire, we've got an ADS server. Here it is. All your users are set up and your accounts and your authentication is taken care of. And you've got a localized internal Jabber server. Supports embedded or external databases, so you can store stuff in like MySQL or whatever database you really like to use. I'm guessing this link is cut off, but I will find this if you need it afterwards. But it's at Ignite Real-Time Projects OpenFire, and you could download. There's tons of plugins for it. It's super easy to use. The only downside is that it's all Java. So if you like Java, hey, you might love it. If you don't like Java, everybody seems to be on one side or the other. But anyhow, you can configure it then over the web. After you've installed the OpenFire package, which they have deb packages available for Ubuntu 8.04. You just go to localhost on your browser 9090. It shows up this nice install wizard. What do you want to call it? What ports do you want to use? What database should we use? Click, click, click. 5 minutes, you're done. And again, if you're using ADS or something like that, you just say, hey, it's over here, done. All your users are already set up, all that kind of thing. And it's really simple. Also, there's been a very nice improvement in 8.04 for Active Directory integration. How many people have Windows stuff at work? You know, pretty much everybody. How many people fight with Samba and don't really like it but have to use it and, you know? Okay. There's a new package in 8.04 called likewiseopen. This is one-click setup for Active Directory integration. Seriously, you click one button and you're done. Okay? It's not like the Novell one-click, but it's really 8 clicks, but we call it one-click install. My apologies to any Novell people. So, I presented, again, when I presented this at OSCON last month, the guy right after me works for these Likewise people, and he presented on this, and he says, okay, I know I've got 45 minutes for this presentation, but let's see, well, let me just dive in. So he puts it in, he puts his computer name and the domain, he clicks, says, well, that's it. That's my presentation. That's it. You're done. Okay? It's so easy. You type in your name, the domain you're connecting to, work group, MS Home, whatever, you know. You click done. It figures out whatever you need and just does it. So you're tied into ADS now. There's a command line package. There's also a GUI package. The GUI package will look like this. So if you have Ubuntu machines, done. You're tied into ADS now. It does, like he set this up and then he logged out of his Ubuntu machine. And then at the login page, he put in his Windows credentials. So his Windows username. Clicked login, done, logged in. Cool. Then he even pulled the network cable out of the machine. Logged in again, logged in. So it can even support like the password caching and the offline stuff that ADS does. And so if you have to use ADS, save yourself a ton of work. So this is new in 8.04. Again, if you're using older versions, it's likely not available there. There's, of course, utilities for the Samba stuff directly if you want to just set up file or printer sharing with Samba. If you haven't used Samba before, this is the communication protocol that Windows generally uses. So a Linux machine or an Ubuntu machine can be a Samba server or a client, or both, I suppose. There's a nice graphical tool if you install system config Samba, which thanks to the Red Hat guys, we have that nice tool. There's also Samba SWAT, which is a web-based utility. So you install the SWAT package and then you can just administer it over a web page. You guys used SWAT before? Yeah, okay. So those are both available in Ubuntu as well if you want to use the graphical tools. Also, how much time do I have, by the way? Does anybody know? Am I just to keep rambling until Jace tells me to shut up?
Right there, it's 20 after, so you got 10
No?
minutes left.
10 minutes? Okay. Okay. Also, in regards to security, in Ubuntu 8.04 we added something called UFW. This is the uncomplicated firewall. How many people have used IP tables and think it's complicated? Yeah, it's kind of IP tables -s, let's see, you know, whatever. So, -a input, blah, 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 right? With UFW, we just try to simplify it. Is anybody familiar with PF, like BSD personal firewall? You know, that syntax is a little simpler than IP tables, right? So we kind of combine that. It is IP tables underneath, but it's just a wrapper on top to make it a little easier. So if I wanted to make my default policy deny, I just say UFW default deny. Okay, that's a little more human readable syntax than, okay, was it -p drop or, you know, whatever. If I want to allow Apache, UFW allow HTTP, done. SSH. and then I can turn it on. So I can apply rules before it's actually active, whereas with IP tables, as soon as you hit enter, it's in memory and it's applied. You can apply these rules and then say, okay, now turn it on. I think I've got my rules set up the right way. You can do status and find out the status. It'll show you your rules. This is like the IP tables -L kind of thing. I will be presenting more detail on UFW at our Ubuntu community meeting on the 11th, which is where?
University of Utah.
Somewhere.
Here, Omar, which building is it?
Where? Yeah, you're the guy. Where are we?
Merrill Engineering
Building?
2355.
2555.
2555?
Yeah.
Okay.
The next one.
So I'll have a much more in-depth presentation on UFW at that. Also, for localized security, Ubuntu is the only distribution that I'm aware of that gives you the option of either Novell's AppArmor or SELinux. AppArmor is the default, but if you want to install SELinux, if you like that, or if it's a requirement for your office or something, you can do apt-get install SELinux. Done. I helped organize a group that migrated SELinux support into the Ubuntu world. Generally, this is just limited to Red Hat families, you know, Red Hat, Fedora, CentOS, that kind of thing. So from 8.04 forward, SELinux is fully supportable. You know, you can do permissive enforcing, that whole kind of thing. Which, this is something I really like. SELinux is a very good proactive security tool. If you don't know much about it, check it out. Just, work the Google on the internet machine and find out about it. Yes, I call it the internet machine, and I call them the tubes. Get over it. So, again, if you want to find more about this, you can come check out my presentation a little later. Other than that, anybody have any questions? Any Ubuntu questions, or how do I set this up?
Quick question for those of us that are pixie installs and such. How come Canonical doesn't represent the mini ISO, the net installer, really well? Essentially, you have to dig to find it.
I don't know if there's like an official policy, but I think Canonical and Ubuntu as a whole are really more focusing on desktop users and end users, and that's going to be more complicated. You're not going to give your mom the mini ISO and say, there you go, what is this?
But choice is always good.
Choice is nice, and choice is available, right? And that's kind of what I'm trying to show you guys. But I think that's not their focus, where kind of Red Hat's focus is server stuff and, utilities and stuff like that. Ubuntu is desktops and end users, and but hopefully from some things that we've picked up here is Ubuntu is more than just a shiny desktop that generally works. It's got a lot of enterprisey level things and utilities that will really help you out.
Does Ubuntu make setting up an LDAP server any easier?
I haven't done too much stuff with LDAP on Ubuntu. There's some work going on it now. I think there's going to be, what's it called? We were porting one of the projects from Fedora. We were taking Fedora directory server and porting it to Ubuntu, but it's not completely ported yet. It's not all done. It might have a lot more progress in 8.10, so in October you might check again. But I spent some time in Southern California talking with some Fedora employees, or Red Hat employees, I guess, about, can we work with you guys to take Fedora directory server and migrate it over so we have the same tools as you do? But we're not done yet. We're working on it. We haven't been around for 10 years like Red Hat yet.
Can you give an example of a large enterprise deployment that you've seen? Size of users,
Canonical? Let's see. I guess I don't have a lot of examples of big enterprises that are using it yet. Mostly the stuff that I teach with Guru Labs is Red Hat stuff. Google actually uses it quite a bit. They have a variant called Ubuntu, from what I know. So they use it quite a bit. I believe Xmission uses it pretty widely. all their, you know, tech machines, when I go to the mirrors.x mission, it says Ubuntu at the bottom, you know. So I guess I don't know any huge stuff, but that's a couple of examples. Anybody else have any questions? Okay.
Is there a migration path from, let's say, Debian stable to an Ubuntu server?
I know previously it was pretty seamless. You could upgrade from Debian to Ubuntu just by changing the repository. I've done that in previous versions. I haven't tried it since maybe 6.10 or something. But I know previously, yeah, I'd have a Debian machine and I could just change the repository to point to Ubuntu and say upgrade. And it just upgraded and I didn't have any issue. But I haven't tested that recently.
A comment on that, I have a large Debian Ubuntu network and we're just shifting to Ubuntu. We found it was fairly simple, even if you just do a fresh install. Most of the configuration files are in the same place. Our biggest problem came with LDAP,
Okay.
which they changed up some packages, but it was an improvement.
Oh, all right.
What would be the advantages of Debian?
A release schedule, an existing release schedule. Let's see. Just personally for me, I think Debian and Ubuntu are very similar, and we owe a lot to Debian. Without Debian, Ubuntu wouldn't exist at all. But I think Ubuntu just takes Debian and puts the polish on it, you know. So it's just a little easier, you know. A couple of examples, like if you install MySQL Server on Debian versus Ubuntu, Ubuntu will prompt you during the install, what do you want the password to be? Debian, you have to assign it. Or when there was that OpenSSH thing that happened not too long ago, you know. The Ubuntu update went in, destroyed your old keys, and then made new keys for you. Debian would just say, hey, you need to fix your keys, you know. How do I do that? You know, now I have to go to Google and figure out how to do it. So it just adds a little extra polish, but at the end of the day, you know, they're both going to be just as stable.
The way I like to look at it is you can use testing for your desktops, and you're going to run just as stable as anybody else doing a quick release cycle. And you can use stable for your long-term support or servers. And you won't have to worry about something going hiccup because, you know, a new package is installed.
Okay. All right, any other questions? All right, thanks. Enjoy the rest of the day.
One quick note about